actually was originally with YLC for a while, and then was able to, go on its own, and it's created such incredible community and done such incredible things. And that really is a great success story for YLC that is all about, being a place for young leaders to get their feet wet, test out their leadership skills, and so we're really excited to see how far it's come. Other thing I'm really excited about is that Melissa Weber was one of our role models this year, and our role models program is about highlighting those in the city that really, show incredible leadership and have done incredible things in the city. So they are the folks that we aspire to be as young leaders. So really excited to be up here and see Melissa and be here to support her today. So really excited to be here for the program, and thank you so much, Megan and Melissa.
Sure. Okay, cool. Even though I could probably project and you don't even need it, but I'll do it anyway, because why not? It's here. First things first, as you all know, if you donated to support this session, you were automatically entered into a drawing to win a $25 Community Book Center gift card. And the winner this session is Veronica Cross. Is Veronica here? You just walked in and you won a gift card. Look at you. That's perfect timing, right? You're right on time. Come on in, make yourself comfortable. And now we're going to introduce these two. We're going to start with Bryan Wagner. He is a professor in the English department at the University of California, Berkeley. His books include Disturbing the Peace, The Tar Baby, A Political History, The Wild Tchoupitoulas, and The Life and Legend of Bras Coupé, the English slave who fought the law, ruled the swamp, danced at Congo Square, invented jazz, and died for love. He will be interviewing Melissa A. Weber, an artist, scholar, and music historian whose areas of interest and expertise include 20th century popular music, the music of culture of her native New Orleans, and archives. She serves as the curator of the Hogan Jazz Archive of New Orleans Music and New Orleans Jazz, a unit of Tulane University Special Collections. As an adjunct professor, she teaches history of urban music at Loyola University, New Orleans. She has presented her work and research at meetings for the American Musicological Society, International Association for the Study of Popular Music, National Council for Black Studies, and Society of American Archivists, among others. In her spare time, and under the moniker of DJ Soul Sister, she has hosted Soul Power, her show on WWOZ-FM New Orleans radio station, for 25 plus years. As a performance DJ, she's performed with artists ranging from Questlove to George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. Take it away, you two.
Thank you, Megan. Hi, Melissa.
Hi. and good morning, everybody. Thank y'all for being here on a Saturday morning. It's, I remember all of the years that I used to DJ weekly on Saturday nights. And Sunday morning was never a factor for me because I was sleeping, right? And when I stopped doing weeklies, I remember I did something on a Sunday morning and I said, wow, I forgot what Sunday morning was like. So then it was like a big deal. So thanks for coming out on your Saturday morning. You could be anywhere, but we're very honored that you're here with us.
Yes, it's great to see you all. So Melissa, you grew up here. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I was born and raised here, and what was it like for me? That's an interesting question because I was raised as an only child. I have a half sister, but I was very much a loner and very protected. So it was fun for me in that I had a lot of things on the inside that were exciting to me, like television and radio. So I lived through music and through thinking. But I was very much a shy person and an introvert. So on the outside, it was hard for me. But so what was it like for me? It was fun in a different way, not the kind of fun that most young people talk about, like playing and doing things. But yeah, I was usually inside listening to records or listening to the radio or watching TV where there was music being played.
So were your parents musical? Was there a record collection in the house, or did they play instruments? Or?
My mother, no. She's not a music person at all. She would always make jokes about when she was a teenager being so shy that she would dance with her bedpost to Clarence Frogman, Henry Records, and Fats Domino, and Professor Longhair. My dad, on the other hand, had a sizable record collection. If I had to guesstimate, I'd say maybe 100 records. And he liked music and some 8-track tapes and things. So yeah, he loved music. He had an organ. We had an organ in the house. What was that name of that organ? The Kimball, maybe? I don't remember. Yeah, he used to always want me to learn how to play instruments. Like I had a little childhood drum kit when I was very young. There's photo evidence of that. And, you know, he brought me guitar lessons, piano lessons, all the things. That's pretty much it. My dad's side of the family, they're music people, party people, celebration people.
So what were you listening to at that time? You know, kind of like in those earlier years, what was your taste in music like?
When I was younger, I would listen to the things on the radio that resonated with me, which was R&B, funk, dance music, disco. There weren't any rap songs being played on the radio until about the mid-80s, and in New Orleans. And things that my dad would play in the house on his record player. All of those things.
Absolutely. So when did you then get into, when did you get into like rare groove funk? When did this become a thing for you?
Well, okay. First, I want to explain and sort of push back against, and it's helpful, this term rare groove, but the older that I've gotten, the less I've really loved it. So this term rare groove actually emerged in the UK in the 90s, and it was this way to categorize mainly black music.
Yep.
Soulful music, 60s, 70s, that was obscure, not a popular hit. So rare, meaning no one else has it. We've discovered it. We've searched to find something no one else has had. But then, and now I'm jumping way ahead. When I started doing my radio show, I played this music, this rare grooves, and people would call and they'd be like, "Oh wow, I haven't heard this song in years. I remember this." So it's like rare to who?
Right.
This music has existed. It was created by someone, meant for people to hear. The term rare is kind of a descriptor. It helps when explaining, I'm not going to play top 40 hits all day and night, but also it has this elitism associated with it that now I push back against.
So when did you become interested in and really invested in the music that some people inaccurately characterize as rare groove funk?
I don't know. That's a hard question. I like to share the story of the first record that I ever. There's a turning point for me. In 1980, I'm about 6 years old, and there's a big hit, a huge pop hit by Kool and the Gang called Celebration, right? A lot of people know, Celebration. That's a humongous hit. And my dad took me to the Center Warehouse record store in Metairie on Veterans, and there was a tent sale with cutout records on sale. So the cutouts are the vinyl records that the record store no longer wants. They want to sell them for cheap. They're called cutouts because they are cut out on the side of the LP, indicating, we want to get rid of this right away. So I'm, at my young age, looking through the records, because I was already on that tip at that point. And I see this album, the album cover is an illustration of an ice cube, blue ice cube, and it says, "Kool and the Gang, music is the message." In my mind, I'm like, oh, this is the album with Celebration on it. Little did I know that it's not 1980 Celebration, it's 1972 cutout music is the message that the store no longer wants because it's years old and it's not a hit and no one wants it. So I said, Dad, this is what I want. And he buys it for me and I put it on my little Fisher-Price record player. And there's no Celebration, and I'm like, what's going on? But it was a different sound, it was a harder sound, and I was like, oh, but I love this music. It doesn't have the hit that I want on it, but I love this music. So that kind of kicked it off as, I just love music that I love. I don't care if it's a hit or not.
I love that story. That's great. Just a moment ago, you were telling me some other kind of crate digging, adventures and things. Could you talk a little bit about the process of kind of going out and finding records? Any particular stories you want to share?
Sure. So this term crate digging refers to a way of finding vinyl records, in my case, music, but going to deeper steps of finding it. So not just going to the record store, but finding yourself in different situations. So when I was in high school, senior year, every Saturday morning, like today, the newspaper would come out with all of the garage sale listings, and I'd go through every single last one of them, and I'd look for the ones that said records or LPs, or I'd look for, maybe it didn't say records or LPs, but I'm like, this house probably has some records. And if I go there and I ask, they might have something that they'll bring out for me. So I'd circle this and I'd tell my dad or my mom, it's garage sale day, these are where I want to go. And they helped me. They would bring me to the garage sale. That's what started it. And then when you're on the hunt for wild records, then you wind up in strange attics, you wind up in strange homes, things might start crawling on you. You might go to different cities and meet strange people. I mean, the hunt, it's really the hunt for music above and beyond the record store. And when I was in high school also, I would always be surrounded with the same types of older men who were also looking for records. Usually they were record dealers who were looking for things to resell. And they started, initially, they all ignored me because I'm just this little teenage girl. They were like, oh yeah, she's probably having her fun. And then one day, one of them noticed that I pulled a record that was actually worth a lot of money, and I pulled it to buy it and had it to my collection. And then they started saying, oh, we need to watch out for her. Like, we can't just ignore her, we need to make sure, that we look at the things before, or, sometimes they'd be like, yeah, sure, look at that box, okay. I use my little, I knew I was out for the hunt back then. They had no idea. They took it, they just like, they soon found out.
And so you've always been vinyl. Vinyl has been the kind of medium of choice for you, or?
Well, yeah, because for one, when I started, in the 1980s, like I'm born in 1975, so yeah, records, that was the thing, and 8-tracks, but I didn't have a car, couldn't drive.
So cassettes too. I mean, so I was like I have no nostalgia for the era of the cassette, and I was a cassette listener. We're roughly the same age.
Okay.
Yeah, we just turned 30, or I guess. Yeah.
Oh God, no. We're like Andre 3000 age.
Right.
We have some stuff going on.
There we go. We're gonna have a flute album coming out soon. But always vinyl for you.
Yeah, there were a few little cassettes. I remember I had Prince 1999 cassettes that I bought for Sears because I clearly knew that this was not something that I could listen to loudly, because it might have had some some sensitive stuff to it. So this way, I could put it on my little Fisher-Price cassette player and put it up to my ear so I could listen to it close and not have my very conservative parents have worry about me.
Right. Another thing I know you know a lot about, you've done some great research on the go-go scene in and around DC. And I was wondering if you maybe want to say something about that scene and why it's interesting to you.
Wow, where do I start? The Washington, D.C. go-go culture, which involves music, but also dance and language and represents working class Black people in Washington, D.C. It comes out of the 1970s, out of funk and the go-go genre as a music, very, very young genre, but it's the indigenous music of Washington, D.C. It is characterized by conga drums, percussion, and also best observed live in person. Even though there are DC go-go recordings, the best way to experience it is live. If you cannot hear it live, there's this culture of PA tapes where people would record the shows either on their own tape recorders or there would be a board recording at the venue, and it would spread that way. Young people would pass the tapes around and it would be distributed in that way. But it is an indigenous music culture to Washington, D.C., sort of like our Mardi Gras Indian and Black masking Indian culture of New Orleans. It's not something that, someone in Chicago would be like, yeah, let's get into, let's go out and experience this thing. So people always ask me, as a native New Orleanian, how do I know anything about DC go-go music? Because I've loved it since I was little, and the reason why is because in the early and mid 1980s, there was this effort in DC, and I'm not going to get into that long story, but to distribute the music outside of DC, similar to what was happening with New York hip-hop culture. And it didn't take hold really anywhere in the United States in a major way except New Orleans, because there was a DJ on the radio playing DC go-go records, and that DJ was, his name was Slick Leo. And I would listen to the radio station that he was on, WAIL-FM, here in New Orleans, and just loved it. So I've been obsessed with it ever since then.
Yeah, fantastic. You put me onto those PA tapes, which are on, if you want to, they're on YouTube.
There are many on YouTube. It's like the culture of taping shows. A lot of people know that Grateful Dead fans tape concerts, spread them around. It's a thing with Parliament Funkadelic fans too. But that, for the P-Funk fans, that kind of started a little later. But go-go is the only music genre culture that you can listen to its entire progression from the very beginning to present. So it's not just a band, it's the entire live music culture. All the bands, all the places, venues, high schools, roller skating rinks, wherever people played this music, there was a PA tape. And starting from the late 70s on, you can just search on YouTube, go-go PA tape, and millions of them will pop up.
Absolutely. So you're developing this record collection, you were going around. When did you start to DJ parties and live sets in the city?
Well, that started after WWOZ. So, yeah, that actually started as, okay, I'll tell the long version.
Please.
In the late 1980s, the new Yo MTV Raps TV show debuts on MTV, and it was a huge deal because it kind of projected rap music videos to people who had never seen them before. Now, I had always been watching rap videos. They would be played on BET shows like Video Vibrations and Video Soul. But the MTV thing was kind of a big deal. And I remember when I was in the 8th grade in 1988, fall of 88, spring of 1989, a young man told me, "You look like Spinderella." Spinderella was Salt and Pepper's DJ. And the only way you would know what she looked like was because of the videos. And also the record covers, I guess, but more so the videos. And I remember thinking, I don't know. But I loved seeing her on the video manipulating records. And it was the first time in my mind, because by that time in 8th grade, I'd already been collecting records, loving music. And I said, wow, it was the first time I had seen a female DJ. All of the DJs in hip hop culture or otherwise were men that I saw. And I said, wow, I think I want to do that. And in high school, you know, I told my dad, I said, I want some DJ equipment. Because all throughout the years, he'd buy me all things, you know, all musical instruments. And I said, I want some DJ equipment. So he went to the store and he bought 2 turntables and a DJ mixer, but he bought the wrong type of turntable. He bought like a home style instead of, he bought belt drive, which is not for DJing live. And he bought a mixer, which was a cool mixer, but because it was the wrong type of turntables, I put them away and never did anything with them. This is kind of too long a story. I need to.
No, this is a great story. This is why we're here.
And then fast forward to college, I'm a freshman in college, I start volunteering at WWZ, and that's another story, so I won't get into that. But someone who heard my show, someone who I was friends with and heard my radio shows, she was like, you need to do that live. And I said, well, you know, it's funny, when I was in high school, I tried to do it, but I just didn't think about it anymore. And this was in 1997. And she said, well, and her name is Sarah. I'm best friends with her to this day. She lives in New York. And she said, you need to do this. And I said, well, I don't have any equipment. And she said, well, my friend is a DJ. We'll get the equipment. And I said, I don't know how to do it. And she said, well, you know, we'll arrange for you to learn. And I said, well, where will we do it? She said, well, I bartend at a place on Poydras Street, because she lived here at the time. And I said, who will come? She said, I'll promote it. And I said, no, I can't do that. And she literally cursed me out. She's like, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. And it's her, because she pushed me and believed in me that I could do it, that I became a live performance DJ, aside from the radio shows that I had already been doing since 1994, 95.
That's really interesting. I hadn't actually realized that WWOC came first. That's interesting to know that. So talk a little bit with your live sets. Are you working from a set list? Are you kind of improvising as you're going? How do you do it?
Sorry, my eyes sort of went like, what? Set list? No way. Never. Everything is on the spot, improvised. Now, it all depends if I'm just playing myself for 4 hours, or if I'm doing a set where I'm opening for someone, where I might only have 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and I gotta keep it simple. So for those where I have to, I'll give an example. I was the main stage DJ, the first main stage DJ at Essence Music Festival from 2008 through 2010. And you know, I'd come on at the top of the night with like a full hour, but then throughout the night, I would have little spots before each artist, you know, whether it was Beyonce, or Maze featuring Frankie Beverly, or Charlie Wilson, or Tina Marie, or Rihanna, and I would or Maxwell, or I would literally sit and think, what would go, my strategy, God, I'm telling all the secrets. I would say, because there's this common thing when people talk about DJs, like play for the crowd, and I've never felt that made sense, because like, I don't know who's in the crowd. I don't have mental telepathy. I don't have, Dionne Warwick's Psychic for a Network power or anything like that. I would say, I'm gonna play for the band to power them up. And always, I always get like, the band being like, yeah, and that's how, but always music that I love, only music I love. That's how I do it. And that's why I call myself a DJ artist, because I don't really believe in requests. I can only play as I love, what I love to do. So in situations like that, I couldn't improvise, because I'm on the stage at the Superdome for, what is that, 60,000 people, and you have to make it very short and quick. Whereas if I'm doing my own thing 3 or 4 hours, I can stretch out and improvise completely. But even with those plan sets, if I'm opening for someone, I always stray from that, because you just feel the feeling, and you just do it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Maybe to transition a little bit to your other work as a curator at the Hogan Archive for New Orleans music and New Orleans jazz at Tulane Special Collections. I was telling my daughter about this event before I came, and I was explaining you were an archivist and also a librarian, but then at night you were a fantastic DJ. And her response was, she said, she's kind of like a superhero, right? She like rip off the glasses and then you're like. So I wanted to ask you that so what are the ways in which being an archivist and curator are like being a record collector? Are there ways in which they're similar, or are there ways in which they are different?
Ways, I don't know, in my personal life, I don't only collect records. I also collect related to the music I love and the time periods I love, which are the 70s and the 80s. I also collect memorabilia, ephemera. And ephemera, what is ephemera? Ephemera, there are things that are not supposed to last a long time, like matchbooks, or concert posters and leaflets, things like that. Things that most people would just throw away after the initial use. I find and collect things, or just keep things that I came up with, or find others. So I have been doing that my whole life, right? So that's also the nature of the Hogan Archive of New Orleans Music and New Orleans Jazz, where I serve as curator. It is a unit of Tulane University Special Collections, and the primary sources there run the gamut. Oral histories, correspondence, business papers, personal papers, photographs, not just audio recordings, not just video recordings, research notes, more ephemera, all matter of primary source material, and caring for those materials so that they're more accessible. The difference between my personal collection and an institutional or a public collection or a community archives is that my personal collection is not accessible to anyone but me. Right. Because the work of archives is not simply and solely to collect, but to make accessible. So one day, I will donate my collection of, and diaries, like the first time I talked to Parliament Funkadelic on the phone. I wrote that in high school. I called WWOZ. They had shown up, DJ Davis was doing a P-Funk marathon when I was a senior in high school, because Parliament Funkadelic came to town. And I'm listening to the radio station, and he's like, oh, the bus has pulled up and the band members are here. And I wrote in my notebook, and I still have the notebook, I'm going to call the station. I'm scared. What do I say? What am I going to do? I actually wrote all this down, and I'm thinking, after I read it, I'm like, why didn't I just call? Like, I'm writing about whether I should call or not. Why did I just call? It's that I wrote about it. So, but it's there. So that kind of thing One day, I would like to make accessible, but that's the difference, is no one can get to that but me right now. And whereas where I am and at other archives, the material is there for everyone to access and utilize. However, their need is.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, what's going on at the Hogan these days? What's exciting to you that's happening at the archive?
There's always a number of different projects, from, you know, the basic things that people anticipate or expect happen at our archives, which is the work of processing collections, describing and making it accessible, to outreach types of events. So what's really exciting right now is, I don't know if anyone has heard, but the Dewdrop Inn is about, it has been redeveloped and is about to reopen. The legendary Dewdrop Inn sites, it was a complex. It was an entertainment venue in the late throughout the 1950s, through the late 1960s, maybe the late 1940s as well. And for Black entertainers, Black patrons, during the period of segregation in New Orleans, and also there were other businesses attached for patrons, for the performers, like a barbershop, restaurant, etc. So it was a whole complex, and it's being redeveloped. Finally, people have been talking about redeveloping these things since I was in high school, and it is finally a reality, and I'm so excited about it. So all of that to say is that Tulane University Special Collections is collaborating with the Dewdrop Inn to incorporate materials that are part of our holdings related to the Dewdrop that will be incorporated in their space, so that there's also an educational element, teaching and historical materials throughout. So I'm excited about all of that.
It's totally exciting. Yeah, yeah. So what are maybe challenges you would say the archive faces? I know that there's a lot of material on hand.
One challenge, I mean, you know, everyone and everything experiences challenges, and there's one challenge that I've learned is a challenge for repositories all around the world, and that is something known as collection backlog. Collection backlog meaning there are materials that are part of holdings that are not yet made accessible. So they are on site, but there's so many things and so little staff to do that work, it will take years to make it accessible, which is the ultimate goal. And we're working through that challenge right now. There's been some new collection management team members hired. So it's not just me, there's like a whole team, research services team, collection management team, other curators, other stakeholders. And the goal is to finally, after, you know, a long time of backlog and collections not being dealt with, finally making them accessible, because again, that is the purpose. But it is not solely a Tulane University Special Collections challenge. It is a challenge that is at all archives, and any professional archivist will say that. I remember I did a visit to the Smithsonian and was asking them, and they said the same thing. They're like, yeah, we've got a collection backlog going, you know, years and years, and it's just a thing. So that's a challenge, because I'm of the mindset of like, make it all accessible today, and there's a process to do that so that it is organized and conserved, you know, dealing with things that might need some repair, you know, before they can become accessible.
So are these things even cataloged? Or, I mean, so I understand there's a preservation process and things, but do you have boxes and you all don't yet know what's in them, or you have a general idea and there's a process of accessioning them?
Yeah, there's a process. So I've gone through all of the collections without the proper processing which involves foldering, describing, then there's two states. There's processed and unprocessed. And then there's also underprocessed, which I don't want to get into too much jargon. But yeah, processed and unprocessed. Accessible and non-accessible, to keep it simple.
Are there other parts of the Hogan's collection you might want to highlight for us? The oral histories are extraordinary. Are there particular things you want people to know about?
Well, as I like to say, it's not simply about collections. It's about what you want. And also, it's not solely about music. That's the nature of archives. So when people hear about what I oversee, the Hogan Archive of New Orleans Music and New Orleans Jazz, their mind, and I understand, immediately goes straight to music. But the topics that are represented in all of the collections can relate to race, politics, gender, media, marketing, you name it, it's there. And it is not solely about music. Architecture, obviously New Orleans and Louisiana. So to your question, things to highlight, really it's what someone is looking for. I try to avoid saying this collection and that collection because it's not about collections. It's about, are you looking to find information about old New Orleans restaurants? Yeah. Or are you looking to find things about women dancers in the 1950s? I mean, it's really as specific as that. And parts of what someone is looking for can be found in all the collections, perhaps. That's the search. And that's kind of like the crate digging thing. It's like I do crate digging I assist research services team because I am not the primary front point of contact for doing the searches. Research services team at Tulane University Special Collections does that. But if it's something that's very complicated, then it goes up to me, and then I love the process of finding help trying to solve a mystery by going above and beyond and thinking of where could it be? It usually is not ever just in one collection.
I mean, as a writer, the work of librarians and archivists in that kind of capacity is just so important. I can attest to it. It's been really important to my own work. Maybe I think one way that people might be engaging with the Hogan could be through the digital collections. The things that you have available online. Do you want to say anything about that and what they might access there, and how that could be a way other than coming into the library to engage with the materials?
Yeah. So there are a few collections, Hogan collections and other collections with TUSC, that's Tulane University Special Collections for short, that have been digitized and accessible online. So you can find them any time of the day, wherever you may be, in the comfort of your own home. And that's, again, available through what's called the Tulane University Digital Library. Hogan collections that are part of that include Dr. Daddio, 1950s radio air checks and live broadcasts from local spots in New Orleans. You can hear New Orleans' first black radio DJ doing remote broadcasts and sort of he would go to places and engage with people for the sponsor of this program, which was Jack's Beer. So there's some music, there's interviews, there are people from the New Orleans community, his audience, talking about how much they love to drink Jack's Beer. It's fascinating, and those have been digitized. There's also a collection, the Lorraine Garreau collection. Lorraine Garreau was the biographer, the official biographer of Mahalia Jackson, who is known worldwide as the Queen of Gospel, Mahalia Jackson of New Orleans. And so that collection is the digitized oral histories that Lorraine Garreau collected to write that book. It includes recordings of Mahalia Jackson speaking. It includes recordings of Mahalia Jackson speaking to Lorraine Garreau and to other people, press conferences that Lorraine Garreau would just record on the tape recorder and just let it go. Some things of Mahalia Jackson singing, but also her contemporaries, her band members, family members, other celebrities that were interviewed. And then, in the middle of all of that, there is just at random, Lorraine Garreau press record, she happened upon the Wild Magnolias Mardi Gras Indians. Now it's undated. If I had to pick a date, it would be circa early 1970s. There's no location listed. New Orleans, I'm going to guesstimate for that, but it is a recording of them. So again, you never know what you're gonna get. So if someone says, I'm looking for something about the Wild Magnolias, Black Masking Indians and Mardi Gras Indians, there's not one collection for that. I would just say, oh, I have this not oral history, this random recording in the middle of the Lorraine Garreau digitized recordings of them performing in the early 70s. Here's something that can be of use to you, and then I'll think of other collections too. So those are two highlights of the Tulane University Digital Library. You can pull those up right now and listen to them at any time.
Yeah, I love those oral histories, and it's just, I had an experience recently just like what you were describing, where I was listening to an interview with George Lewis and his mother, and I thought I was going to learn about one thing, but George Lewis's mother was talking about songs in Louisiana Creole that she had learned from her mother, and about different recipes and things, and I was like, I didn't think this was what I was looking for, but oh my goodness, this is incredible, you know?
Yeah, archival research is also known as slow research, because you might be taken down a rabbit hole that you weren't expecting, and it will, it's not like using a secondary source, or look in the index, you go to what you want to find, the end, or you go to the next book. With archival research, significant time has to be dedicated to it, because, again, it might lead you somewhere else that you didn't even know existed.
So I'm wondering, do you have anything you might say about your vision for the future of the Hogan Archive? You talked about the backlog of the collections and the kind of extraordinary day-to-day work that's happening. Where would you like to see the collection moving in the coming years?
One of the reasons that I did the recent name change and rebranding from the Hogan Jazz Archive to the Hogan Archive of New Orleans Music and New Orleans Jazz was to anticipate not only representing in a public-facing way the materials that we actually do have that represent other related but other stories, such as New Orleans gospel or Mardi Gras Indians and Black Masking Indians, but to also make sure that people know that we are moving towards the future. And I would like to see collections and materials and stories that represent New Orleans hip hop and New Orleans bounce, and also other indigenous sounds that may, presently have a gap of stories in the collections now. Also, doing more outreach and also working, hoping to engage Black creators of collections so that we have a full range of stories represented from the perspective of Black people and people of color.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa. This was a great conversation.
Oh, wow. Is that her time? I've been having so much fun. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions from the audience? Yeah.
What would be an example of a national hit go-go that we Bustin' Loose?
An example of a national go-go hit. There have literally only been two of DC Go-Go, and you called the one Bustin' Loose by Chuck Brown and the Soul Searchers in 1979. And then also in the late 1980s, in conjunction with the soundtrack of the Spike Lee film School Days, there was the song by EU, that's short for Experience Unlimited, a song called The Butt, which was a huge, huge song. And that was a go-go song by a DC go-go group that was a big national hit that crossed way outside of Washington, D.C.
When I was playing on the Chicago blues scene in the late 70s, Buster Blues was very popular. Many bands covered.
Yeah, Buster Blues was they did that on Soul Train.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Hi, thank you for your time and presentation today. This is really great. Can you speak, this is a rabbit hole in itself, can you speak to the process of people donating to the archives? Are there certain parameters? Are there specific things you're looking for? I mean, I get a sense of that from your talk today, but is there an invitation to the public?
Thank you for that question. So, to speak broadly about the process of donating, right? If someone was interested in donating to the archives, mine or anyone, what would that look like? Start with a conversation. Don't just pick things and drop it off like Salvation Army style. That is not, no way. Because it's a long process, it can be an emotional process for people, but also you want to make certain that the material fits in with whichever repository's collection development policy, whether it's mine or someone else's. So let's say, and every now and then I'll get someone who's like, yeah, I have some, it's just a topic that is not related to what I collect, like Seattle punk rock or something. And I explain, what our collection development policy is related to the subjects and types of materials that we are able to steward. And if it doesn't fit, then usually at all times, I'd like to suggest another repository that might be a better fit. But if it is a great fit, it's really a conversation, because let's say you have clothing from, a legendary artist, and one of our rules is we do not accept clothing. Maybe the New Orleans Jazz Museum does. So it just starts with a conversation. There's some back and forth, and then, that is finalized by a deed of gift, which formally and legally transfers the material from you or whoever to the institution, repository, whatever it may be, so that it can do the work to make it accessible. Again, it is not solely about collecting material, but making it properly accessible with permissions in place. And then there's all sorts of different aspects, if you have materials that have intellectual property that belongs to someone else, if there are materials that you are uncomfortable with anyone seeing, there's all sorts of asterisks throughout, and it's just a conversation. Also, getting full information, getting an inventory of what you have, so that we don't guess and no one else guesses, so that it is properly and fully described, so that people can accurately utilize it, in respect to what the material is. And also knowing about who the creator is, whether it is you or someone else getting that by you. So it is a long process. It's more than, we will take your materials, thank you, bye. It's a long process, but it is ethical and it is relationship building. So when it comes to donors, I always love the process of getting to know them as well, because it's a lot, even for me, and I have a personal collection that I want to donate to archives one day. It is a lot to consider something that's been a part of you and letting that go, but I would rather it be accessible to someone than to wind up, flooded away one day or in the thrift city somewhere, you know. So I'm thinking about those things right now, and it is a lot to think about. So the process involves talking, answering questions of each other, and doing things the right way.
Other questions?
So if I wanted to come in and like look at the archives, what would be the process I would have to go through? Can I just wander in and be like, show me all the stuff, or what do I do?
That's a great question. It is the #1 question that I get. I want to come look in the archives. How do I do it? And my answer is not a happy answer, unfortunately. Because, and this is why. So archives are unlike museums or galleries. There's nothing on display to come in and look at. It is also unlike a circulating library where you go to the library, you look at things on the shelf, you pull it, look at it, pick it out, might take it home with you, bring it back. It is unlike that. So nothing's on display, nothing is actually on view for anyone to look at. Because of the nature of archival materials rare, valuable, sometimes fragile, everything is held in closed stacks that only the staff has access to. So you would make an appointment, you would ask in advance, you would ask what you are looking for, and then you make the appointment, the materials brought out for you at the appointment in a reading room, sort of that looks like this, tables and chairs. You're at the table, the material's brought out, you can spend time with it, do what you need to with it. If you need to come back the next day, the next 7 days, next 17 years, you could do that, but it is done basically in that room, and then at the end of your appointment, the material is brought back to the closed stacks to make certain that it is safe and preserved, because we have materials going back to the 1800s. So it has to be kept safely, cared for properly, housed responsibly, all of that thing. But everything is accessible, but you have to make an appointment to see the materials if you want to see them on site. There's, you know, we can make scans of things, there are some digitized materials, but then also knowing what you want to look at. This is the example I give for that. It's like going to a record store. You don't go to the record store and say, hi, I want to buy some records. The clerk is going to say, well, what kind of records do you want? Good records. Well, what kind of good records? Good records by men. Well, you see what I'm saying? So be as specific as possible with your request so that the staff can help to find exactly what it is that you want. And then in regards to the, things being in closed stacks, it's like a bank, right? You don't go to the bank and say, hi, I want to see the money. You ask for the money, they give you a deposit slip or whatever sheet, you fill out the things that you want, and then they go back and then they bring the money out to you. It is that same concept.
Any other questions?
I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to what are the processes of deciding what goes into the archives and what doesn't, and kind of who gets to decide that?
Yes, the process of what goes in and what is collected in the archives and what is not. Wow. When I started, I had to get some clarification about that from our director of special collections, who is above me. All of our team has the boss, the director of special collections, and she shared that is the purview of the curator. So I'm the curator. And in doing this name change and rebranding from the Hogan Jazz Archive to the Hogan Archive of New Orleans Music and New Orleans Jazz, that was a part of it. I said, I want to be more expansive about what we collect. Maybe that changes after I leave, but while I am there, If someone has materials related to New Orleans hip hop, I'm going to accept them. If someone has materials related to women, black masking Indians, I am going to accept them. So I can make that decision because I've expanded the collection development policy to reflect things that I feel are important. So that decision is based on the curator and also the director of special collections, because I mentioned earlier, we don't accept clothing, we don't accept large objects like instruments. You know, that is a higher decision. But as far as the nature and topic and subjects related, I have basically made a decision that we reflect New Orleans music and New Orleans jazz, not only New Orleans jazz.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That's great.
Thank you.